Dear distinguished guests, scholars, students, bonjour. Just to say I'm from France, I come from France. Dear organizers, especially Aga Khan Centers, Dr. Rabia and all of her colleagues, thank you very much for having me in this conference at this crucial moment. And my presentation, my two-day presentation, indeed is a chapter of my PhD project, which is currently I'm working on at INELCO, Paris. And the title is Afghan Diaspora in France and the question of maintenance of cultural identity. So at this presentation, I would like to talk about the Hazara community in France and the concept of multiculturalism, pluralism, transnationalism, and integration, the Afghan Hazara in France. Introduction. Migration from Afghanistan has given rise to significant Afghan Shiite and Hazara diaspora worldwide, which provides an ideal case to study multiculturalism, pluralism, and transnationalism within diaspora communities. This presentation will explore how multiculturalism and pluralism shape the collective identities of Afghan Shiite, especially the Hazara community, while examining the pros and cons of these frameworks. Theories on transnationalism will further illuminate how cultural connections are maintained across borders, impacting both diaspora's integration into host societies and its solidarity with the homeland. First, historical context and collective memory. The Hazara community, especially Afghan Shiite, carries a strong collective memory of marginalization, which has been embodied in their cultural identity. A prominent example is the persecution they faced under Abdur Rahman Khan, which remains a powerful unifying force. This memory helps them form what Benedict Anderson says in 1983 as an imaginate community, a network that transcends national boundaries and brings together the Hazaras around the world. The global Hazara diaspora often mobilize to address human rights issues, lobbying for the recognition of the past massacre as an act of genocide. This mass massacre was a part of systematic campaign to subjugate and eradicate the Hazara population, leading to near destruction of the community and leaving a lasting legacy of trauma and marginalization. Syed Askar Musawi's account in his book, The Hazaras of Afghanistan, an historical, cultural, economical, and political study, underscores the extreme violence and exploitation faced by the Hazara, which continues to shape their historical memory and their present struggle for human rights and recognition. The influence of these shared histories on Hazara diaspora demonstrate how collective identity can sustain a community even in a diverse multiculturalism societies. For instance, community members advocate for acknowledgement of these historical experience while participating in a democratic frameworks of their host societies, a balance between advocacy and integration. 2. Multiculturalism and acculturation challenges. In France, The principle of laïcité establishes a framework for multiculturalism by allowing the Hazara diaspora to express their religious and cultural identities within a democratic system that maintains public orders and respect individual beliefs. La laïcité promotes a state neutrality and protects both religious and secular perspectives, supporting civic unity through values of liberty and equality. This enabled the Hazara community to engage in their cultural protection with generational differences in acculturation. Old generation often adhere closely to Afghan Shiite traditions, while younger generation navigate a balance of Afghan heritage and French society values. Under multiculturalism frameworks, the Hazara community can celebrate its heritage without pressure to assimilate, fostering internal solidarity. However, this emphasis on distinct identity can, as well Kim Lika's theory suggests, lead to an insular focus that may reduce cross-cultural engagement. This perspective in group cohesion sometimes limits integration and can contribute to a cultural lack that hinder alignment with broader societal values. Here, laïcité bridge cultural distinction by promoting common civic values, encouraging a balance between cultural preservation and inclusive societal participation. The third, pluralism and identity negotiation. In open societies like France, pluralism provides Afghan Shiite and the Hazara with significant civic opportunities, enabling them to actively integrate while expressing their cultural and religious identity. Pluralistic frameworks encourage engagement within society, allowing them to contribute to shared values like human rights and civil liberties, while maintaining their unique cultural heritage. This dynamic enables community members to navigate both individual and collective identities, balancing participating in a civic life with advocacy for Hazara rights and recognition within the host societies. However, the expansion of a strong, strict religious identity can sometimes restrict meaningful interaction between the Hazara and Shiite communities and broader society. Addressing these challenges requires a critical examination of internal cultural values, identifying areas where traditional beliefs may hinder openness and new societal values. Importantly, the Hazara communities historical experience of marginalization has often made them more receptive to host cultures that offer safety, respect, and acknowledgement of their identity, providing a therapeutic counterbalance to past trauma. This inclination toward protective culture underscores the values of pluralism, where integration is encouraged with the context that respects both diversity and shared civic principles. Some members of the Hazara and Shiite community particularly those with a strong religious conviction, may perceive engagement with pluralistic host society as a form of cultural alienation. From their perspective, preserving traditional customs, especially religious practice, serves as a crucial means of safeguarding Hazara identity across generations. This perspective often tends in a contrast to reformist views within the community, leading to tension between those advocating for integration and those fearing of losing core religious and cultural values. For conservative pluralistic integration, present risk of diluting not only ethnic but also religious identity, as it involves adopting values and norms that may conflict with their traditional beliefs. Such tensions underscores the complex dynamic within diaspora communities, where varying level of adherence to religious and cultural practice influence attitude toward integration and cultural preservation in a host societies. 4. Transnational network and solidarity. The Afghans cross-border political, cultural, and social initiatives have led to development of strong transnational networks, vital for maintaining connection with Afghanistan. In supportive multicultural host society, Afghan Shiite and Hazara engage in activities such as remittances, social advocacy, and financial contribution, supporting both the economic and cultural resilience of their communities. In countries where pluralism and multiculturalism are not freely supported, like Iran, transnational support networks face significant challenges. Despite shared religious beliefs, the Shiite and Hazara communities in Iran struggle with restricted access to formal structure for identity preservation and transnational engagement. This lack of institutional recognition, combined with limited legal rights and cultural expression, has led to identify a struggle among the second and third generation of Hazara living in Iran. Exclusion from Iranian citizenship and barriers to expressing ethnic identity have led many Hazara to rely more heavily on internal community engagement. As Liza Chauvet and her colleague suggest in 2018, greater exposure to a host society's cultural and norms typically enhance both integration and the transmission of these values back to the country of origin. But restricted connected, as seen in Iran, harms this exchange. 5. Integration, cultural preservation, a double-edged sword. The level of integration for immigrant community in a host society is heavily influenced by the host society's inclusiveness and openness. In a case where cultural and linguistic similarities exist, integration tends to be smoother. Shared values, beliefs, and social norms often reduce cultural barriers and foster mutual understanding, which can lead to quicker acceptance and adaptation. research shows that common culture ground can bridge differences, making it easier for immigrant community to contribute with local and actively engage in a society. However, when there is a significant cultural or linguistic divide, as often experienced by Afghan, Hazara, and Shiite, for example, in France, integration becomes more complex. Cultural distance can lead to misunderstandings of feeling of exclusion, which may encourage communities to turn inward and form closet integration patterns. This occurs when communities primarily interact within their own culture group rather than engaging with larger society. When barriers or exclusion are perceived, communities may instead focus on maintaining their ethnic and cultural identity within their diaspora networks. In addition, the ethnic association within the diaspora community play a vital role in preserving cultural heritage, especially for younger generation who may not have direct contact and experience of the homeland. However, excessive focus on ethnic identity can also limit interaction with a broader society, creating a dynamic where cultural preservation comes at the cost of wider social integration. For second and third generation of immigrants, engagement with the origin culture may decline naturally over the time, although cultural institutions can help maintain a sense of continuity and identity with the host society. Conclusion: the Afghan Shiite and the Hazara diaspora experience reflects a complex between heritage preservation and host society engagement. While multiculturalism and transnationalism support cultural preservation and solidarity, they may limit integration and reduce engagement with a host society. Pluralistic engagement fosters broader societal participation but risks cultural dilution over generation. Ultimately, the Afghan Shiite and the Hazara diaspora's journey underscores the importance of both continuity and adaptability, with inclusive host societies playing a pivotal role in balancing these elements. The example of the Hazara community demonstrates how diaspora identities evolves, navigating the challenges of preserving heritage while embracing elements of host societies. Thank you so much.